Thank you for joining us. With the issue of corruption on every lip in Nigeria, it becomes imperative to know the role of the Anti-Graft agency like the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission and the ICPC. And gathered here are legal luminaries, members of the EFCC and the ICPC to discuss that role. The stolen resources lost by Nigeria through endemic corruption and abuse of office has affected the economy negatively. The problem of Nigeria from independence till date is largely leadership related. These are words from the organizers of this annual lecture.
The first step and the proper thing to do in the fight against corruption is to stop fighting corruption on the pages of newspapers. Second would be to tackle corruption massively at its roots and stop wasting the nation's resources on the germinated branches or superficial affiliates of corruption. The third would be to have a dedicated court that will fast-track the trial of suspects and all those accused of facing corruption charges. The fourth and the most important would be leadership by example. That represents the soul and spirit of the success of the revolution that transformed Singapore. These creatively ingenious undercurrents are currently sweeping through some African countries where the leadership is focused, determined, proactive, progressive-minded, and forensic-driven.
So why wait until monies are stolen before EFCC kicks into action? It has about 14 different functions. Prosecution is only one. All the other functions predate prosecution. But they are interested only in the one that the press can blow up, that they can magnify. Because if you go and stop somebody from stealing money, it's not news because money has not passed, has not changed hands. They're not interested in that. But imagine how much can be saved if corruption is nipped at the bud, rather than waiting until somebody has converted from car to a house, from a house to a foreign exchange in Dubai. Now that's when they will now be traveling all over the day and collecting extra code, looking for where money have gone.
And since the arrest of the judges by the DSS and investigation into their activities have been ongoing, the NBA and the NJC have been divided over whether or not the judges should be suspended or step down pending the outcome of the investigations. I spoke to a few lawyers on this issue.
What we're just saying is that they should step aside, stop sitting on cases for now while the investigation is ongoing, so that the confidence of the public in their capacity, in their integrity, will not be further eroded. We don't know what will happen while this is on and they're still handling other cases and they're giving judgment. So those judgments will have been given in good conscience and in good faith according to the law. But because of this event, a litigant or even the lawyers may think, no, this same judge that has just been arrested and under investigation. So we feel, for decency of that office, for the integrity of that force, and for the dignity of that office that they are occupying, there's need for them to stop sitting for now. And that means they should go on leave of absence, not suspension.
I believe that asking the judges to recuse themselves is coming against the presumption of innocence, which every person is entitled to. It is upon due trial and then conviction, then the issue of asking them to recuse will not come in. But so long as they are entitled to that constitutional right to freedom of innocence, that is presumption of innocence, they are presumed to be innocent until a proper trial is conducted.
The position being canvassed is that because there was a petition which they are investigating about or against these judges, therefore they should be suspended until the investigation and trial is completed. The implication therefore will mean that for all the petitions that have been written against all the judges or the judges in question in Nigeria, all the judges by implication should step down. Then if that happens, who will now be presiding in our matters?
Before we go, let's take a look at some court stories.
This crowd of supporters stormed the premises of the Federal High Court, Lagos, brandishing placards and banners in support of the former First Lady, Mrs. Patience Jonathan. Though Mrs. Jonathan did not show up in court, her fundamental rights enforcement suit against the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission came up for mention. In the suit, the former First Lady alleges that the Commission infringed on her rights to own personal property under Section 44 of the Constitution. She is also urging the courts to compel the EFCC to lift the no-debit order placed on the sum of $15.5 million in a Sky Bank account which she claims belongs to her. Mrs. Jonathan is seeking damages against Sky Bank in the sum of 200 million naira. When the case was called, the counsel to the EFCC, Mr. Rotimi Oyedepo, informed the judge that the matter was coming up for the first time. He said that some of the respondents were yet to be served with the court's processes, and as such, the matter was not ripe for hearing. This submission was not contested by Mrs. Jonathan's counsel, Mr. Granville Abibo, SAN. Justice Babs Kuwumi then fixed December 7th for the hearing of the case. In the meantime, the Court of Appeal in Abuja has again affirmed the jurisdiction of the Code of Conduct Tribunal to try the Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki. Delivering judgment on the appeal filed by the Senate President, Justice Abdul Aboki affirmed that the CCT has jurisdiction to try the case. The panel agreed that the tribunal erred in discharging former Lagos State Governor, Senator Bola Tinubu, but the tribunal has since corrected itself in subsequent judgments. On the claim that a quorum was not formed before he was charged, the court resolved the issue against the Senate President. Justice Aboki resolved that 3 men at the Code of Conduct Bureau can adjudicate on any matter. All the 4 other members of the panel unanimously agreed with the lead judgment delivered by Justice Aboki. A former Minister of Aviation and spokesman for the Goodluck Jonathan presidential campaign, Mr. Femi Fani-Kayode, is to be arraigned in Abuja on November the 10th. It was gathered that Mr. Fani-Kayode, who is still being detained by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, is to be arraigned on fresh charges bordering on criminal diversion of funds. The Federal High Court sitting in Lagos fixed December the 12th, 2016 to rule on whether or not to transfer to the Court of Appeal a suit filed against the federal government by former militant leader popularly known as Tompolo. The judge fixed the date before hearing arguments from parties involved in the matter. Tompolo, who is wanted by the EFCC over alleged fraud worth 49.5 billion naira, sued the federal government through his lawyer. He's seeking an order restraining the federal government and its agencies from further proceeding with the fraud charges. The defendants in the suit are the federal government of Nigeria, the EFCC, the Inspector General of Police, the Chief of Army Staff, the Chief of Naval Staff, and the Chief of Air Staff. The Lagos government has arraigned 4 suspects arrested in connection with the kidnap of a traditional ruler in Iba town before a Lagos High Court in Igbosere. The suspects were arraigned before Justice Oluwatoyin Taiwo on an 8-count criminal charge of conspiracy to commit murder, armed robbery, and kidnapping. The suspects, who allegedly carried out the crime on July the 16th, 2016 at the Palace of the Monarch, pleaded not guilty to the charge. The state's Attorney General, Mr. Adeniji Kazeem, promised to prosecute the matter expeditiously. A federal high court judge in Abuja has withdrawn from the case filed by the federal government against the self-proclaimed leader of the Independent People of Biafra, Mr. Nnamdi Kanu. Mr. James Soho says he will return the case file to the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court, Justice Ibrahim Ota, for reassignment. Mr. Kanu had earlier petitioned Justice Soho before the National Judicial Council over alleged judicial rascality. At the resumed trial yesterday, his lead counsel, Chicks Moma, brought an application claiming that the court was biased in the manner it so far handled the matter. In his ruling, Justice Soho said he had no personal interest in Kanu's trial and will be returning the case file for reassignment.
Thank you so much for being a part of the program. I'm Victoria Ido. Till I see you again, remain positive.